forest is burning. The heat arrives before the flames, and everything alive understands what it means. Birds lift from the canopy in a single startled wave. Deer break from cover and run without looking back. Beneath the leaf litter, 1,000 smaller lives are already fleeing the rising warmth. In every direction, the message is the same, and it is very old. Move away from the fire. Move away and live. But something is moving the other way. Low over the smoke, small and dark and utterly deliberate, a single insect is flying toward the flames. It is not confused. It is not trapped by the wind. It has crossed a great deal of ground to reach this exact place at this exact moment, and it has done so on purpose. While the whole forest empties, this one traveler is arriving, and it is only the first. Behind it, drawn from somewhere out beyond the smoke, more are coming. This is a beetle. It is about the length of a grain of rice, plain and bronze black, the kind of creature you would never look at twice. And yet it can do something that sounds impossible. It can find a wildfire from far across a landscape it cannot see, and steer toward it with the confidence of a creature going home. So this is the question that will guide everything that follows. How does an insect this small locate a fire from kilometers away? And stranger still, why would any living thing want to? Let us start with the why, because it is the key that unlocks the rest. For almost everything in this forest, fire is an ending. For this beetle, fire is a beginning. Its name is Melanophila acuminata, and it belongs to a family called the jewel beetles, most of which gleam like polished metal. This one does not. It is the drab cousin, dressed for soot.
And it has bound its entire existence to the one thing the rest of nature is built to escape. The reason is hidden inside the trees. A living tree is not a passive thing. When something tries to bore into its wood, it fights back. It floods the wound with sticky resin. It pushes sap through its tissues. It fills the injury with bitter chemistry designed to drown or poison anything small enough to burrow in. For a soft, pale larva trying to eat its way through solid timber, a healthy tree is a trap. But a tree that has just burned is a tree that can no longer defend itself. The resin no longer flows. The chemistry goes quiet. In the hours and days after the flames pass, a scorched trunk becomes something rare and precious, a great column of defenseless food standing silent in the ash. This is where the beetle must lay its eggs. This is the only place its young can survive. And so the blackened forest, which looks to us like a graveyard, is to this beetle a nursery. Which means everything now depends on speed. The window does not stay open for long. As the wood cools and dries, its value fades, and competitors begin to arrive. To win, the beetle must reach a fresh burn early while the trunks are still warm. And to do that, it must detect the fire from a distance, often a very great distance, long before it can see a single flame. So how does it do it? The obvious first guess is smoke. Smoke rises, smoke travels, and to us the smell of burning is the unmistakable signature of fire. It would be reasonable to assume the beetle simply follows its nose across the sky. For a long time that is roughly what people believed, but when researchers tested it, offering beetles the scent of smoke and watching to see if they would crawl toward it, the beetles were unmoved.
Whatever guides them across those long, open distances, it is not the smell of burning wood. There is another sense at work, and it is far stranger. To find it, we have to turn the beetle over and look at a part of its body no one would ever think to examine. On the underside of the thorax, tucked in beside the middle pair of legs, are two tiny pits. They are almost invisible, easy to mistake for nothing at all. But inside each pit, packed together like the cells of a honeycomb, are around 70 microscopic domes. These are the beetle's infrared organs, and with them it can feel the invisible heat that a fire pours out across the world. Every fire radiates infrared. It is the warmth you feel on your face standing near a bonfire, the glow that pours from embers even after the flames die down. Our eyes cannot see it, but it travels in straight lines through open air, and a large fire broadcasts it in vast quantities. The beetle has, in effect, evolved an antenna tuned to that broadcast. It reads the fire's heat glow the way a radio reads a distant signal. And here is where almost everyone's imagination takes a wrong turn. It is tempting to picture these organs as a second pair of eyes, some special infrared vision that lets the beetles see the fire glowing on the horizon. That is not what is happening. These organs did not evolve from eyes at all. They evolved from touch, from a hair. Every insect is covered in tiny sensory bristles, the hairs that let it feel a breath of wind or the footstep of a rival. Deep in the beetle's ancestry, on this exact part of the body, there were once ordinary bristles like these, each one wired to a single nerve that fired whenever the hair was bent.
Over immense stretches of time, evolution took that humble touch sensor and rebuilt it into something extraordinary. And to understand how, we have to shrink down, past the pit, past the honeycomb, into a single one of those domes. Imagine a sphere of hard shell, no wider than about 15,000ths of a millimeter, smaller than a mote of dust. Where a normal hair would rise, there is instead this rigid ball. Inside it is not empty. It is filled with a soft, spongy core soaked in fluid, a microscopic reservoir. And at the very center, sealed inside a tiny liquid chamber, sits the tip of a single nerve, the same kind of nerve that once waited at the base of a touch hair, listening for the slightest bend. Now watch what happens when the fire's infrared arrives. The heat is absorbed by the fluid inside the sphere, and the fluid does what warm things do. It tries to expand, but the hard outer shell will not let it. With nowhere to go, the trapped fluid pushes outward in every direction, and the pressure inside the sphere climbs. That rising pressure presses against the membrane at the tip of the nerve, and the nerve, which has spent 100 million years learning to detect the faintest touch, feels the squeeze. That is the secret. The beetle does not see the fire, it feels it. The warmth of a distant blaze is converted, inside a sphere smaller than a speck of dust, into a gentle mechanical pressure, and the beetle senses that pressure the way you would sense a fingertip pressing on your skin. A deformation smaller than the width of a single atom is enough to make the nerve fire. It is, quite simply, one of the most sensitive pressure gauges in the living world, and it has been repurposed to touch light itself. And it is fast.
From the instant the infrared lands, the nerve responds in around 4,000ths of a second, faster than thought, faster than a blink. It does not report a slow, steady warmth. It fires in sharp bursts, tuned to catch the flicker and the sudden onset of flames. This is not a thermometer. It is a trigger. So the beetle crosses the distance by feeling. But there is a second sense waiting for the final approach. Those antennae are not idle. They carry receptors exquisitely tuned to a chemical called guaiacol, one of the sharp, smoky compounds released by burning wood. The beetle can smell that signature far better than its ordinary relatives, more than 10 times as keenly. It seems the two senses divide the labor between them. The infrared organs handle the long journey, following a straight, honest beacon of heat that does not bend or scatter in the wind. And then, once the beetle has landed on the charred bark, the antennae take over, sniffing out the precise spot where the wood is freshest and the eggs will thrive. Heat to find the fire, smoke to find the tree. Now, just as the picture seems complete, the mystery deepens again. In the laboratory, scientists have measured exactly how sensitive these organs are, and the numbers are impressive but modest. By their careful estimates, a beetle should be able to detect a fire of about 10 hectares from a distance of roughly 12 kilometers. That alone is remarkable for a creature you could balance on your fingernail. But the old records tell a wilder story, one the laboratory struggles to explain. Nearly a century ago, in the dry heart of California, a colossal oil storage tank caught fire near a town called Coinga and burned for days. Beetles arrived in numbers no one could count. What made it extraordinary was the geography. There was no forest nearby. The nearest stands of pine were 80 kilometers away or more. If those beetles came flying from the trees, then they had somehow sensed that blaze from far, far beyond what the laboratory says is possible. And the oil fire is not the only clue. These beetles have a long history of turning up where there is heat, but no wildfire at all. They have gathered at sugar refineries, crowding around vats of hot syrup. They have swarmed metal smelters miles from the nearest woods.
And on one famous afternoon at a packed football stadium in Berkeley, California, the beetles descended on the crowd in such numbers that they began biting the spectators, apparently drawn out of the surrounding hills by the heat and the smoke of tens of thousands of burning cigarettes. Wherever a strong source of heat appears, sooner or later these small dark travelers seem to find it. So which is true, the cautious 12 kilometers of the laboratory or the vast distances of the field reports? The honest answer is that we still do not fully know. One intriguing idea is that a beetle pinned in a lab and a beetle in full flight are not the same instrument. In the air, the beetle may borrow energy from its own beating flight muscles, scanning the horizon with every wing beat and comparing the signal on its left side against its right, teasing a faint whisper of heat out of the background noise of a warm world. Whether the true range is 12 kilometers or 100 remains for now an open question. The beetle knows the answer. It simply is not telling us. What we do know is that human engineers have been paying very close attention.
Our own infrared cameras, the ones that let us see heat in the dark, usually need to be chilled with bulky cooling systems because otherwise their own warmth drowns out the faint signals they are trying to detect. Yet here is an organ, working at ordinary temperature on the belly of a beetle that manages exactly the feat our technology finds so difficult. So researchers have begun to copy it. They are building artificial infrared sensors modeled on that single fluid-filled sphere, tiny pressure chambers that turn heat into a measurable push, borrowing a design that evolution perfected on a burning forest floor long before we existed. A creature that hunts for fire is quietly teaching us how to find heat. Let us return one last time to the burning forest and see it now with different eyes. The flames that looked like pure destruction are also, in their strange way, an act of renewal. And moving through the smoke, flying the wrong way while everything else flees, is a creature that has made peace with fire more completely than any of us ever could. It does not fear the heat, it reads it. It speaks a language written in infrared and felt as pressure, a language most of life spends its whole existence trying to escape. The blackened trunks left behind are not a graveyard after all. They are cradles, already claimed. So the next time you watch a wildfire burning on a distant hillside, remember that somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the smoke, something very small has already felt its warmth and turned and begun the long flight in. A beetle the size of a grain of rice, carrying a sixth sense for fire, hidden in plain sight in forests all around the world, waiting patiently for the day the world begins to burn.